big fan of the sour beans.
She's helping out.
This is great.
It's like someone already chewed all the sour out.
Now, wait a minute, what's this idea about dressing
Then I
up
might
for
like,
council meeting?
but I don't know.
I need to get my head wrapped around it. Are we gonna pick a council member and dress up like
We all
them?
should dress like
Spirit week.
someone.
All right, Brandon's ready. We need to start.
I'm sorry, okay,
I'm
gotcha.
I'm
No,
dressing like Cory.
okay, gotcha.
Oh, thank you. We're ready.
Wait.
I will now call to order the study session meeting of May 20th, 2024. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person city council meetings in council chambers on the lower level of City Hall. Public access to tonight's meeting is also available on the city's YouTube channel online and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the agenda. Will the city manager call the roll, please?
Mayor Lighty,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lukeman Haramasa, Councilmember Burns,
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo,
Here?
Councilmember Kondo,
Here.
Councilmember Roper,
Here.
Councilmember Goff,
Here,
Councilmember Nowicki,
Here.
and Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have 3 items on the agenda for our study session tonight. The first one is a letter of opposition to increasing heavy truck size and weight. City Manager Heather Geyer will introduce this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At the last legislative committee meeting, the committee discussed and provided an update to City Council. The request from Joshua Collins, who's the Assistant Vice President of the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. His request is that the mayor send a letter on behalf of City Council in opposition to HR 3372 and HR 7496. Now, both pieces of legislation are at the federal level. We don't often receive requests for letters of support or opposition for federal legislation. So this is a unique situation and circumstance where our legislative protocol, our legislative guide rather, does not specifically have any guidance on this issue of larger and heavier trucks. So I provided significant background information through Joshua Collins to you. You see multiple attachments that outline the different elements of both pieces of legislation. There are a couple examples of other letters of opposition. I modeled the recommended letter for Northglenn to sign after the Fort Collins letter, and that covers both pieces of legislation. I did confirm with Mr. Collins that that's what his ask of council is. The first piece of legislation, HR 3372, passed the House of Representatives Committee in 2023, and what I was told, it's in the queue to be heard on the floor. We don't have a specific date of when. However, Mr. Collins believes that it will be heard before the end of June. HR 7496, also known as the MOVE Act, has not been scheduled. As I allude to in the memo, in terms of the specifics about HR 3372, there's greater detail that I was able to provide to you about HR 7496 in the memo on that first page. And then I included the bridge formula definition for reference, knowing that that's a very technical piece. The one piece in the letter that's attached, data-wise, that the PD provided to me is you see 1, 2, 3. In the 4th paragraph down, in 2023, there were 415 crashes involving commercial trucks in Adams County, and that's including the stretch of Interstate 25, as well as frontage roads and county roads. I could change it to 352 crashes, removing frontage roads and county roads, but I believe it's more inclusive to add both frontage and county roads, given the routes that these trucks travel. and it's a significant number. So that is the request before you tonight. With the lobbying protocol, because this issue is not specifically covered in the legislative issues guide, that's why this item's being brought to council as a whole to weigh in on. And I did offer to Mr. Collins an opportunity to attend tonight's meeting. He was unable to attend. So I'll do my best to answer any questions. However, I'm not an expert in heavy trucks.
Well, there's a lot of information in the
Yeah.
back. Anybody have any questions or comments on this topic? This is a discussion item, so we're not voting, so we just to kind of talk it through. Councilmember Condo?
So frontage road, in my mind, when I hear that word, I think it's a road that runs parallel to the highway. Washington's would not be considered a frontage road, right? That would be
I
more of a
don't
surface
think
street.
so. Deputy Chief, do you want to provide some explanation? You helped pull that data, so.
Most roads are considered highways. By definition, right, not interstates, but highways in the state of Colorado. And frontage roads generally are rural, parallel to the highway, for minimal durations. They don't generally run parallel to the highway for, extended amounts of miles. It's exit to exit or access to farms or access to businesses. Those are the frontage roads. Everything else is considered major roadways or interstate or a highway. So frontage roads and county roads you could look at and see kind of larger roads. They can be, they're usually 2-lane roads that run through connect major intersections or major, like 85 to I-25. But for the most part, Washington is considered a highway, so to speak. Your main roads in jurisdictions are considered highways. Interstates are I-25 or your 70, all of those. And then your frontage roads and county roads are more rural roads that traverse between major intersections in the counties.
Gotcha. And one follow-up question. Section 36, Colorado 7, do we have any jurisdiction or responsibility along that, or
Weld County.
it's a Weld County? Gotcha.
As far as the roadway is concerned, you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So are we just talking kind of the jurisdiction over the relevant piece being I-25 with regard to heavier truck?
This letter of opposition would be for any impacts to Northglenn, which would be Interstate 25, so you think 120th, 104th, what Deputy Chief was talking about in terms of Washington, those major roadways within Northglenn. However, the data that we collected encompasses the entirety of Adams County.
Okay, so theoretically, one of these trucks, because it looks like it's 80,000 pounds to 91,000 pounds for 10 years on its interstates. So theoretically, one of these trucks could get off the interstate and drive anywhere in the city, and that's the challenge.
Not theoretically, they do every day.
They do.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you, if you oversimplify the ask, is you see the heavy truck traffic today. You see semi-tractor trailers coming on and off the highways, traveling through our city. The attempt with both pieces of legislation is to increase the weight, so increase the size that those trucks can hold, as well as the length of the trucks. So there's an argument that both of those dynamics pose greater safety risk to motorists, as well as degradation to pavement roadway condition, which from a Northglenn perspective, we've invested about $15.5 million in about 3.5 year period in terms of increasing our roads. Council just approved a contract with Brannan to do repave the portion from I-25 to Sylvia for the southern lanes of 120th. So that would be a perfect example of our investment in that roadway that's traveled heavily by large trucks, such as what's discussed here.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. So Councilmember Condo, when you asked about frontage roads, was there a piece in here that caused your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to get some clarity in my mind, because when I think about frontage roads, I think about just what Deputy Chief described, you know, in the countryside or whatever.
Oh,
And so I just wanted to kind of get a sense, we don't really have them.
is there a frontage road component in here that I'm missing?
That is a good question.
Well, one of the things I could do, because
I
I
haven't seen it,
think
but I
I
was
might
just
be
wondering if I missed it.
understanding where you're questioning this. So when you go to the draft letter, I have involving commercial
yeah.
trucks in Adams County, in parentheses, including frontage roads and county
county
roads. I can provide examples.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Sorry.
Washington.
I kept going
can
back
spell
into
it
the
out.
bill, trying to figure out where it
Yeah,
said
yeah, no,
frontage
no,
roads.
I'm talking
Okay.
about the letter.
I'll
got
just go ahead and use specific examples such as Washington, Huron Street, 120th, 104th, I'll do that. That was a very literal thing to do.
Yeah, no, now I get it.
So
Sorry.
thank you.
I was confused for a moment.
Yeah.
Councilmember Goff?
This makes a lot of sense to me, but I'm just curious, people who want to pass these bills, the bill sponsors or whoever, I mean, is there some reason besides just they can make more money more quickly, or?
I believe that's the reason, interstate commerce.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
I haven't
in
heard
sup-
of any
I'm in
other
support
reason.
of
Yeah.
sending a letter.
Councilmember Walker?
Thank you. I'm 100% in support of the opposition letter, as we have a hard time enforcing laws on commercial vehicles as it is. And so I'm in 100% support. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too am in support of this letter of opposition. I did get a chance to speak to someone who is an expert in the trucking industry at last week's CML district meeting, a council member from Commerce City whose family has been in the trucking industry forever. And he and I were talking a little bit about this, and he's heavily against it as well. Just these components, infrastructure wear is huge. Just adding that 10 feet of length or whatever it is increases that weight by so much that it just literally destroys roads. And considering, you know, we bisect I-25, it does affect us. And it does affect the roads that our residents travel in and out of from our city as well, even if it's not just a Northland thing. So for those reasons, I definitely would support opposition. And then the safety in terms of the added feet required to stop, somewhere around 22 feet, I think is the estimated. I think that's huge. And, you know, whatever we can do to keep ourselves and our residents safe, I'm for. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Burns?
Thanks. Sorry, I'm having some connectivity issues, but just wanted to say that I also support signing this letter of opposition.
Great. One other thing to consider with the safety component is that our city sort of straddles a huge accident corridor on I-25. And I just think this is adding to it. So to protect our residents, and for all the reasons outlined here, I think the letter is very well written. And I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, Senior Center Transportation. Recreation Manager Michael Stricker is here to discuss this item.
All right, we'll keep the transportation theme going here. Thank you very much, Mayor Leidy and City Council. I am here on behalf of the Senior Center this evening. I'm also joined by Senior Center Coordinator Kate Fisher is here as well. So thank you again for having me. Let me get the slideshow going here. Okay, so we are here tonight to provide council with a response to resident inquiry and identify alternatives regarding transportation for North Glen Senior Center off-site programs. So on January 5th, just some quick background, a Northglenn Senior Organization, or NSO, board member submitted an email request to City Council stating, I would like to make a request for City Council to find a way to purchase a 15-passenger bus for the seniors. The van just doesn't work for us any longer. We would like to go on more outings and hopefully get more seniors to go with us. It would be greatly appreciated if council could make this happen. Mayor Pro Tem Lukman Haramasa brought the inquiry forward at the January 8th City Council meeting. At that meeting, City Council provided consensus for staff to explore the transportation options in response to this request. Staff confirmed that we would be looking into this at the March Northglenn Senior Organization meeting as well. And then additionally, other NSO members have spoken to City Council members and staff informally with similar requests at various other events and have indicated a desire to have a bus instead of a van. The major need that has been expressed is that an accessible vehicle should be prioritized for seniors because the current van is too difficult to get in and out of. So the current vehicle that everyone's talking about is the existing 15-passenger Ford Transit van that you see on the slide here. It is used primarily by the Northglenn Youth and Teen Division, as well as the Senior Center and other divisions. So it's one vehicle meeting a lot of different needs. It was purchased in 2015. It does not require a CDL or commercial driver's license. It can carry 14 passengers along with the driver, as well as, and has a fleet score of 4 out of 15, which means it's in good condition. However, the specific issues for seniors are, as I've said, accessibility into and out of the van is very difficult. There are no hand railings. The steps are extremely steep and narrow. Passengers have to bend over once they're in to get to the seats. And for those of you that have been in there, because I know some of you have, it doesn't have any real aisle or easy way to get to all the seats. Additionally, and this is significant, is there's absolutely no room for walkers or assisted devices. And lastly, because the vehicle is primarily used by the youth and teens, particularly in the summer, trips are extremely limited because of availability to the van. And so staff spent a lot of time actually speaking with other area municipalities and senior centers, as well as spoke to Via Mobility Services. What we found was that most municipal senior centers have 2 to 4 dedicated vehicles to their senior center. The vast majority have buses, specifically shuttle buses, not a van like our 15-passenger transit van. They all spoke about the benefits of how accessible a shuttle bus is. Across the board, every single one of them. They do not get much demand for wheelchair accessibility. Just like us, they arrange for other accessibility transportation options if they receive a wheelchair request. It should be noted that a major need is to be able to take 14 seniors to various sites for day trips without wheelchairs. We just do not get the request. Wheelchair spots in a shuttle bus permanently removes 4 to 6 seats, thus restricting your bus to only around 9 passengers-ish regularly. So it's a significant limitation to the vehicle. Having a wheelchair spot on the bus requires a lift. And several hours of ongoing training for staff to use the lift. And again, what we learned from speaking with other area senior centers is that they rarely, if ever, get the request. And like us, what they do is provide other transportation options when we do get that request. And most area senior centers have vehicles that do not require a CDL, which is required for any vehicle over 15 passengers. So anything above 15, it requires a CDL. And most of the folks that we talk to do not have a vehicle that requires that. CDLs are expensive to maintain. They require ongoing training and greatly limit who can provide the trip. So possible solutions. We can continue to use the current van and just make it work, as they say. We can greatly ramp up the use of charter buses. We can purchase a 15-passenger shuttle bus or some combination thereof. So we went ahead and put this graphic together for you just to kind of illustrate what those pros and cons are. So the current vehicle, the van, the one you see there on the left, obviously the greatest pro is we already own it, and it's going to last us for quite a long time, so we don't have to purchase a new vehicle. But then, of course, the cons are significant for our seniors specifically. There are those safety concerns. It just simply is not accessible, particularly for those that are in walkers or have any issues going up steps. It has decreased our attendance. So we will take a day trip, and seniors won't come back to do another one because they've experienced the van and they're like, we're just not doing it. And then the not having any access for walkers. And I did want to give a quick example here. One of our seniors that participates almost every day, Monday through Friday, and all kinds of things. He just loves our programs, and he's here all the time. However, recently he's really been wanting to do the day trip, so he'll show up. He does have a walker all the time. He will show up with a cane and leave his walker at home, and it's really dangerous and is not good for him and not good for staff. And that's just sort of one example. And then, of course, the limited availability, particularly in the summer months. We just cannot get access to that vehicle as often as we would like for the seniors. So then the middle one here is charter buses. And of course, the pros are it is accessible because all charter buses do have that accessibility required, no matter the size of it. Availability is a pro, meaning we can book it far out and have it dedicated to that, as opposed to it being a shared vehicle. They would have CDL drivers, so the capacity could go way up. But here I did want to illustrate that is not the need for the senior center. We're not looking for a large bus. We have very little need for anything over 14 guests. We do use large charter buses when we do multi-day trips. So for instance, some seniors just got back from Savannah, Georgia, like this weekend, I think it was. They had a great time, like 8 or 9 nights out, and that is something that we book through different companies. Diamond Tours was this one, and so we do book charter buses on a large scale that way, but the need for day trips is not a large vehicle at all. So then the cons, there are significant costs. So right now, to get a 15-passenger shuttle bus for 4 hours starts at $500. And then goes up from there. Most of our day trips do go longer than 4 hours. And so we would have to, on each trip, have to kind of figure out where that money is coming from. Are we budgeting for that throughout the year? Are we passing that cost on to the seniors? It does book months in advance and creates no flexibility. So as many of you may have seen, we'll set a day trip up. It's February, we're getting closer, the weather goes sideways. We would have very little flexibility in moving it, and they have very restrictive cancellation fees. Then you have the last option here, which is the shuttle bus. It is accessible, and mainly in terms of it has ADA steps going all the way up. It has handrails. It has large aisles to get to every single seat. It has room for walkers. So a big pro there. And excuse me, the other thing being, not only would we be able to better meet the needs right now of our current programming, we would greatly expand our day trips by having that dedicated shuttle bus. And when we're talking about a dedicated shuttle bus for the senior center, just like with the van, it would be shared for other divisions when it was available, but it would be dedicated to the senior center. And all current staff can drive it. If it's a 15-passenger or less shuttle bus. Kyle actually is our main driver, who's already a senior center staff, but so can Kate, myself, and others. And then we can also get an ADA placard, so we can make sure that we get nice and close to whatever the particular location is we're going to. And then, of course, the only con there is the cost. Something still to be purchased. Excuse me. And so with regards to recommendations, to increase senior center day trips and service to our seniors, staff recommends the purchase of a shuttle bus. 14 guests is our sweet spot. It allows for the greatest attendance on day trips that one staff member can handle, because we always want to make sure that the staff member that's taking folks places can help everybody out, and no more than 14 gets a little more unwieldy, so 14 and under is perfect. It is also the demand that we are seeing for day trips is the size of a shuttle bus. And this is where I did want to point out the typical day trips we're talking about. So typically, we're offering these to 55 folks that are 55 years and older. The day trips are developed, promoted, and conducted by senior center staff. Currently, our two main programs are excursions and restaurant roundup. Both programs include an extensive variety of locations so that seniors can explore the region and fellowship with others. Your memo actually defines several of those trips that we already take. Having a dedicated senior center shuttle bus would allow us to greatly expand these types of programs. Not only would it help bolster the current types of trips we are offering, but it would be able to increase the quantity and frequency. And then, as you can see again, there would require no CDL, and staff can drive those. So with regards to pricing, this is the base information that we've gathered over the past few weeks, and it can fluctuate greatly depending on when the bid process begins. It'll also depend on what the costs are at the time of the bidding for any additional options as necessary as well. These costs that you see here on the slide do not include a wheelchair lift. Wheelchair lifts cost an additional $50,000 to $80,000. With regards to the electric or hybrid options, so fortunately, they are being made. Unfortunately, they do not have the range of the regular day trips that we take. In our discussion with VIA, they have indicated that they are indeed building out their fleet with electric shuttle buses, but they are limited to under 150 miles for one charge. We did confirm this with the manufacturer, and those miles greatly go down when using heat or AC systems. It can get down to like 100 or less. We would also have to invest in a charging station for this type of vehicle. A high level 2 or 3 is what would be required. But most importantly, due to the limitations of the miles that can be had on one charge, we would not be able to meet the needs of even our current day trips. VIA is able to achieve their routes by having a fleet of electric vehicles with they're doing remote monitoring. And so they'll pull a bus off the line and come back and send another one out because they're remotely keeping track of the charge. So they have to have their fleet to actually be able to operate. And then, so the ranges you see here are the best information we have at this time. So we are seeking consensus tonight. Staff does recommend that if we could do it through the 2025 budget process, that would be great. We could submit it for consideration through the regular process. We do recommend the 15-passenger shuttle bus. The Star Trans Senator shuttle bus is sort of the type that we're looking at, meets the needs of all the accessibility questions. And then Fleet would love for us to get a Ford because that's what our current fleet it has, and so it makes it a lot easier to get parts and components. And then with regards to the electric or hybrid, it actually is not preferred, but it would be something that we could look into availability and pricing and how to operate with less miles possible. So that was a lot of information, but I'd be glad to take any questions, and Kate and Amanda can also help out as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here and great presentation. I, of course, would love to see electric or hybrid, but I hear all the things you're talking about. So look into it, but, yeah. My question really is, you had said that looking at other municipalities, they don't have a request for wheelchair, but then you were talking about putting a wheelchair lift on the one that we're looking at. And can you say some more about that?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I wanted to make sure that you knew that there is the option to have a wheelchair in a shuttle bus. It's not recommended, and none of the senior centers that we talked to, and I think it was like 12 or so, none of them recommended getting one. So
Okay.
just wanted you to know that it is an option, but staff at this time doesn't
And is
recommend
it
it.
an option that we could do in the future sometime if we decided, or do you have to pretty much? do it?
Retrofitting makes it actually even more complicated. So it would be something that you would want to likely do upfront. But again, it's not only vehicle considerations, but it's training considerations,
right.
staff having the ability to handle it. It also does create a lot of, when you're dealing with 9 to 10 people, you sometimes have to bring a guest to help take care of the wheelchair, that sort of thing.
Okay, well, I agree that buying this shuttle is the way to go, and quicker the better, and hopefully hybrid or electric, but probably not. Thank you.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, both of you. I would be in favor of this. You know, I sit on the NSO board, I'm the liaison, and it's certainly something I hear quite often from seniors. I think, you know, it really enhances the accessibility and really provides, I think, kind of makes the program more robust, you know, and offer significant kind of outing potential. So I would be in favor of that. As far as I know, the existing van is kind of used by other programs. So would that this would be dedicated senior van, and then the existing van would still just continue to be used by those programs, correct?
Correct, yeah. So really, the current van is mostly used by youth and teens, particularly during the summer months. Then the senior center kind of gets plugged in, and then other divisions, because you know, we've used it for Art on Parade things or what have you. And so what would happen is the new shuttle bus would be prioritized for the senior center. It wouldn't be exclusive, because we'd want to make sure if some other program popped up that needed accessible travel, we could certainly provide that. But it would be dedicated towards seniors, so we'd be able to start expanding all of those day trips to 2-3 times a week throughout the year. And then the current van would continue to be focused on youth and teens, and they could actually expand their programming because they would have it dedicated.
Seniors did say if you move forward with the van, they promised me to stop asking about. Oh, really? I'm just kidding. Thank you.
It's like, I think I missed that meeting.
Yeah. Councilmember Helmio?
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Michael. Hey, pretty much I think I answered my own question. I was looking into O'Mara Ford, since you said Ford was recommended, but I couldn't find any at O'Mara Ford. I'm just trying to do the shopping with you, trying to see what's available, but yeah, I couldn't find one there. But yeah, this is great. It's well needed. I know from being in the van myself, you know. Yeah, it's definitely, I can't imagine being a senior and going in and out of that, especially in the back row.
I can.
Well, I mean, I can't, because I'm like I'm in my 30s, but I'm like, geez, I get in the back, I'm like, man, can't. It's time.
No fun, yeah.
It's time, it's not fun. Well, thank you, and yeah. Well, I'll keep looking too, so thank you.
Councilmember Roper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. You really brought out some important points, that this is something that's important for our seniors and really providing that accessibility for everyone. But definitely this is something that.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple things. One, I was just looking at Thornton because I'm trying to figure out if other cities have similar sort of thing. And actually, from what I can tell, it looks like Thornton does not. In fact, they rely primarily on A-Lift to get their seniors, even to their daily soup and lunch offering that, I don't know, maybe Kate can set me right on that. The reason why I say that is this would be yet another differentiator for the city. I was actually swimming today at our rec center, and in the next lane to me was this lady who is in Thornton. She loves swimming in our rec center. And actually, she used to be a former employee of our Northland Police Department. And for the life of me, I can't remember her name. I said Chief May, and she said, yeah, I know that guy. Was it Sylvia?
He was my dare officer.
Anyway, so I'm just saying to myself, this is a nice thing to be able to offer. I'm definitely in support. One other thing I'd offer is I was sitting up here surfing the internet, and there is this Canadian company called Overland that does back or retrofit of shuttles with electric drive systems. Well, hybrid, not entirely electric drive. So I sent you that link and one of their flyers, so it's in your inbox
Okay, great.
for
Thank you.
consideration.
And if I could just clarify real quick, so Thornton actually does have 3 vehicles for the senior center. They've got a 13-passenger, 14, and a 17-passenger. But for the food program specifically, they do have funding through VIA to provide that service for their food program. So Thornton Senior Center provides a food program, which we do not. So they do kind of have a mix of both.
So you're saying they do have dedicated shuttle?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. Thank you for setting me straight on.
You bet, no problem.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Nowicki, I sat on that board for 2.5 years before you, and they have been talking about parking for that long, so you are not going to get away with that. So absolutely, I do support this. It's been a request for a long time and have definitely seen the need through our seniors, through the meetings, which you know of. And they do a lot. Like, our seniors are so wonderful and so active. And I think it's important for us to support them and figure out a way to make this part of the budget, when it comes forward. I do think that gas is probably the best option just because of the worry about how it could restrict the distance and it's not something fun to think of if you have a bus full of seniors and with some mobility issues to have to deal with that. So down the future, down the road, if there's something that changes and they increase the capacity, which will probably happen as technology gets better. But for now, I support looking into what, just a standard gas bus will do. They deserve it. We deserve to support our seniors the best we can. And I heard from them that other senior centers all around have one. We're the only one that doesn't have one. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard. So thank you so much for this presentation. A lot of good information, very thorough. I support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
And it's going to sound like a dissenting perspective, but it is not. I just want to make sure I have all of the information when I get questioned. So when you say other cities have them, are they the same size and do they have the same annual budget as we do?
So, just to give you an idea of we spoke to Thornton, Wheat Ridge, Westminster, Castle Rock, Brighton, Longmont, Erie, and Commerce City. So they definitely have different budget sizes. All of them do have their own vehicles. They all fluctuate between 2 to 4. And the vast majority of them have a 15 or under. A couple of them do have CDL drivers, but that is like Castle Rock has a CDL driver. All the others have vehicles that are under that, so that they don't have to have CDL drivers. Does that answer your question?
I mean, yes and no,
Okay.
because what you just described were cities of all different sizes that have all different budget numbers that are considerable.
Yes.
I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. That price tag is huge, and when I think about the budget process and what we have spent using that ticket price in the past, like, that's a significant amount of money, and so we need to be able to answer that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Amanda did point out, so the best comparison is Wheat Ridge has a very similar budget size to us, and they have 2 vehicles. Both of them actually are the Senator version as well, so it's the one that we had recommended.
Do they have a senior center that is like more robust than ours? Are these empty vans? Like,
Are you familiar with that one?
About the same,
okay,
mostly day activities, but they don't.
yeah. I can hear you, but the audience cannot.
Mostly day activities, they don't have a meal program like we don't, so very similar in size. I think because they've had the 2 vehicles for a while, they also have a staff member that a large part of their priorities are trips, so.
Okay. If we sold the one we have, could we offset the cost? I know we want to keep it, but if we did, would that help pay for this one?
So typically at auction, those are going for significantly less than what we would be purchasing them for. I would suggest our intent is very much to keep that vehicle so that we still have great alternatives for our youth trips that take place all summer long, as well as other citywide uses. It is used on a very regular basis.
I figured, just asking.
Yes.
And then the wheelchair component, it seems like if this is gonna be, used as intended, it would make sense to do that, and so I was wondering why it wasn't in the proposed budget number
So, because there's so little need for it. So,
at this time.
pardon me?
At this time?
At this time, well, and then when we talk to the other senior centers and they have so actually several, or a few of them did have wheelchair lifts in their vehicles, and all of them wish they didn't have it because they don't get enough demand. So the thing is when you make it wheelchair accessible, it decreases the number of seats. So it limits the use of the vehicle with less folks. And so because there's so little demand for it, based on other senior centers' usage, that's why staff recommends that we don't. And there are other resources available for folks that do actually make the request for a wheelchair.
What do you do?
VIA is one. VIA is actually the typical one, and then,
Flex.
yeah, if you want to talk
Okay.
about Flex.
Flex ride, okay.
Yeah, we have quite a few that use the RTD Flex Ride. So, and they are wheelchair accessible.
I just didn't want to be excluding anyone by purchasing a van that didn't have what they needed.
Yeah.
So, as long as there's other options, that makes sense. And then, has there been any thought to a cost share, possibly fundraising, or the people that are using it doing some sort of, I don't know, helping us raise the money for it? I'm just really concerned about the cost. It's so expensive.
So I'm going to jump in. We haven't talked specifically, though. The NSO, as the Northglenn Senior Organization, really their members are paying the cost of trips directly to the NSO, and then those costs are going out for those trips. When it's a city-sponsored activity, just like any of our other city-sponsored activity, typically, we have not built in additional costs for transportation when it's provided by a city-owned vehicle. That has been part of kind of our overhead expense. It's certainly an option. Either way would impact what cost our residents or our users are paying to go on those trips, whether that be through the NSO or trips that are budgeted and funded through the city, through the senior center. So I think any fundraising that's done would probably be done as a additional cost for a participant to attend a trip.
So I guess what I was envisioning, so like, I have a nonprofit budget. I want to buy something I can't afford. I have to do a fundraiser, right? A spaghetti dinner, a fun run. I have to find a way to pay for it that's not within my allotted budget. And so instead of just asking somebody else to pay for it. So I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm not disagreeing that they need it. I'm just trying to figure out how to find the money. So if you've already found it and you're like, don't worry, it's in there, we found it, it's in the budget, great. But I don't know that yet, and since we're looking at the budget pretty carefully coming up, that's $150,000 that we need to find.
Correct. So I would say for the 2025 budget, no, we have not found those dollars yet.
Okay.
Typically, we certainly could put out the request for a fundraiser through the NSO. I would suggest that the way the NSO operates, they are not a fully separate entity. And so it would appear that we're asking them to raise dollars rather than providing transportation as part of our programming, which is what we do for most of our other programs. So it'd be a bit of an outlier. And Jason is sitting behind me.
Could you repeat that for me? Because what you said was brilliant, so could you say that one more time?
Is it typically we do not ask our participants to fundraise to provide programming because they're fee-based programs.
Thank you. Again, I'm asking the questions so I have the answers in my pocket, because I appreciate that you're thinking through it that way. Okay. That makes sense to me. And it seems like, because the other group I was thinking that was using it was the Youth Commission, but it sounds like they're not going to because they're going to have their own.
So they use the 15-passenger van currently as a shared. It's actually all of our youth trips, so it's not necessarily our youth commissioners. So they're, again, fee-based trips that kids are signing up for throughout the summer months.
Yeah, and those are incredible. Okay. Okay. I guess I support it emotionally, just for what everyone has said. I think it's something we should provide. I'm super curious where we're going to find it in the budget. So
And staff are
See what
exploring some possibilities for funding, whether that be general fund dollars or other funding sources. I know we've looked at ARPA as a possibility. So we're exploring those options. We don't have them quite there yet, but certainly wanted to hear your feedback first to understand if that was something you were willing to hear as part of that 2025 budget process.
Yeah, find it. We have more questions. Councilmember Goff.
Not really a question. I was just, well, maybe. I think you kind of answered it. I was going to ask about grants. There's certain grant funds out there for seniors that we could maybe make use of, but it sounds like you have that.
And we're certainly willing to explore that.
Yeah. And I will say that the current van is probably fine for the youth because they are more limber than we are. And they can climb back there and get in that back row without any problem.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, do you have something else?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to follow up to that, I was going to ask the same question, like, are there grant opportunities? But you're looking into that. I just remember one of the times that we used it as a city council, and even Councilmember Walker was having a hard time getting in and out and mentioned that. So would love to see this, whatever opportunities are available. And I'm wondering, is there any chance that the county would have any kind of grants or something like this for the seniors? I
We
mean,
will. We will look into
with
it.
their
So
new,
programming has
hybrid-
some opportunities, but, and as Michael mentioned earlier, there's some dollars available for electric or hybrid, though that doesn't look like it's going to work for us. So, but we can certainly explore what those opportunities are.
Excellent. Since they're, the AAA is now moving towards a hybrid program, just curious.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
All right.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Kondo. Saw you sneaking. One more thing?
I'll keep it short.
That's okay.
Yeah, so just to echo what Mayor Pro Tem said, I mean, obviously Adams County has their area agency on aging, so that may be an option. And I was just looking at used E450 shuttles, and the price point was somewhere around, and I don't know how many miles, but around $75,000. So
So yes, we will explore those options, and based on what we're hearing tonight, we will bring back during that 2025 budget process, which is going to be here like before we know it, a package request for that bus.
All
So
right.
thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, final item tonight, traffic calming update. Deputy City Manager Jason Loveland is here to discuss this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before we switch topics, I did want to touch base on the purchasing of that vehicle. Amanda did mention the opportunity to leverage the ARPA dollars, and whether we use ARPA dollars specifically for that or to help support our other vehicle purchases for 2025. I'll say it now, confident that we'll have available dollars using one of those sources to move forward with this purchase. So we will look into the other opportunities, but I am confident that we'll be able to fund that, leveraging the dollars that we currently have.
Great,
So,
all right, thank you.
so traffic, roads, all of the fun. So item number 3, related transportation. Just to touch on this real briefly, we're back here today after our conversation about the traffic calming policy on March 4th. From that meeting, we were given direction to kind of come back with a little bit more information, a little bit more detail, pull a larger group into the conversation, which we've done that over the last several weeks. I'm not going to touch on too much of this, just kind of scanning through the memo. I do want to point out that attachment 1 on this is something that I found super helpful as a frame of reference as we did some comparisons to what other jurisdictions are doing. I thought that was a really good place to look, just to see perspective-wise on what we're doing versus some others. So the presentation that our colleague, the team is going to present tonight really is going to touch on some various options, new tools that we haven't presented before, for discussion and for your consideration. And then additionally, 3 specific roadways that have had a lot of conversation over time, Melody Drive, Irma Drive, and Fox Run Parkway. There are a lot of slides here, and I know that the city manager mentioned that last week. This isn't necessarily the intent to go through in finite detail of every single slide and look at every single option. However, the engineering team did lay out several things to consider. So I want to keep that in mind as far as the visualization of possibilities and not necessarily, at this intersection, this is what's going to go in because that's a recommendation today. It's mostly kind of broad conversational opportunity for council and staff to have that dialogue. So at the end, really looking for feedback of the new tools and different options from council. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Daniel Martinez and Greg Kothe to go through the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Okay. So as Jason mentioned, after our March 4th meeting, we were tasked with coming up with some solutions or new ideas and to kind of explore what we're doing and compare it to what other municipalities are doing around the metro area. So we're here tonight to present possible changes to the traffic calming policy and discuss potential traffic calming options at various locations previously discussed with you guys. So there are 4 basic areas that we are gonna explore tonight. The means and methods for testing. We've heard a lot about the timing, when we do it, how long we do it. Do we do it at the right time? Do we do it during school year or when school is out? We've also heard about the data collection and some suggestion about removing vehicles traveling below certain speeds. People feel that those shouldn't count or should count, so we're going to explore that. Then I'm going to let Greg go over the testing results. He went out to Melody, Irma, and Fox Run and retest at 4 different locations. He'll present those results. He will also took a lot of time exploring alternative to the toolbox that we have, things that we haven't tried. He's going to go over the things that we have tried and with the ones that we have had success with. And then, as Jason said, he went and laid out a multitude of options at these roads of things that we could potentially do. Like Jason said, it doesn't mean that we have to do them all or that we intend to do them all, but it's new things that we would like to explore. So as far as the means and methods, we, as attachment 1 shows, we looked at what our surrounding municipalities are doing. We looked at 10 different cities. Only 4 of them has a traffic calming policy. The rest do not. So we are trying to get our testing method in line with what others are doing. So the first thing is most places only test during the school year. They also conduct testing when the weather is fair. So if we move to doing that, the benefit of that would be to ensure that we are testing at the most likely traffic pattern that the neighborhood sees during the year. But again, if we do that, that will really limit the days that we have for testing. So we will also recommend that we move to a shorter testing period. Right now, we test for 7 straight days. Other cities do 3 or just 1. And we did explore how that would affect the results, and I'll let Greg talk about that. But we were surprised by what we were seeing. Like I said, if you look at attachment 1, it shows the municipalities that the cities that we looked at. Broomfield and Thornton, they take all the data points into account. We didn't find any program that removed data points below a certain threshold, a certain speed limit. So we think we should continue using all the data as collected. Most cities have a 5 miles per hour 85th percentile. Thornton has a 4 miles per hour, and Bruinfield has a 7 mile per hour in non-school zone areas. They do have a 5 miles per hour in school zone areas. And Broomfield and Thornton only test for 1 day. I know this is a lengthy presentation. I don't know if you guys want to ask questions while we go through this after each one of the sections that we're presenting, or if you want to hold questions till the end.
We can go through it, yeah. Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I did attend the, I think it was the speed, no need for speed session, Ward 4 for Melody Drive with Mayor Pro Tem. And the issue regarding data points, it appeared, at looking at some of the raw data points, is that the radar system had captured perhaps cars that were pulling in and out of driveways along Melody. And if that's the case, then, you know, if you're pulling in and out of a driveway, that's different than traveling along the main axis of the road.
Sure.
So were those
So
low speeds biasing the total average down such that, I
So
forget how
the-
much it was, 1 or 2/10 of a mile per hour that disqualified?
So the thing to consider is that traffic traveling the road also helps in reducing the speed. So if you're traveling behind a car and that car is turning into a driver or turning right, that also slows you down. And Melody is a little different because it's so wide and so traveled, but every other residential street has driveways. And nowhere else are we thinking about just taking the lowest, let's say 5 miles an hour vehicles just because they're turning or coming out of a driveway. That is the layout of every other residential street in the city. And it does affect the data, obviously, because it's taken into account, but we don't believe it affects it significantly to start removing points. And if we start removing points at the bottom, can we say the same about the ones on the top? I mean, are we going to remove the ones that are 60 miles an hour just because they are outliers? But that's the engineering opinion.
Sure.
And that's what I'm here for, looking for guidance on.
I'm just here to relate what I observed.
Sure.
And what the residents were kind of keying in on. And I'm not a traffic expert either, but, you know, I also, with my science and math background, it seems to be a reasonable sort of discussion, you know? Do you have bogus data points that might be skewing the distribution curve?
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually going to speak to that Ward 4 meeting as well. Just because this scatter plot, there was just a lot on that low end. But I didn't think of, from the perspective that you mentioned, traffic pulling out can slow traffic as well. So that's good information to have, and just looking forward to hearing the rest of this presentation. But I was curious if, when you asked about that data and all the data that they use, were you able to actually like visually see some of their results, and did it look similar to like Melody that had a lot on that low end that seemed to be people moving or bicycles or something like that? I was just curious in
Were you able to
comparison.
get any of that information, Greg?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I was curious if on the other data that you compared these different cities and that they use all of the data, were you able to actually visually see how many of those were on the lower end that could have been affecting their
So was I able
their
to see
averages?
other city studies?
Yes, since
No.
other cities are referenced here and that they use all of the data, I was curious if you actually saw, because Melody had a whole bunch on that scatter plot that were on the lower end of 5 miles per hour. So I was just curious if it was similar to that without visually seeing that plot.
I did I only talked with the other traffic engineers with other cities, and they just said they considered all data points. I didn't get into the specifics of if it went up or down.
That's fine. Let's continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Councilmember Goff.
Okay, so I'm drawing on my, research background, and I think that it is important to use all the data. And the reason I would say that is that if we had one person that was whipping through a neighborhood at, 100 miles an hour regularly, that's a whole different problem and a whole different kind of solution than, like a few people that consistently go whatever it is, 20 miles over, or occasionally go, so I just think that it's a more balanced to use all the data, because if we take out all the people or most of the people or some of the people who are doing what they're supposed to be doing, then it looks like there's this huge problem that we would end up spending a lot of money on, and it might be just a handful of drivers. So that's my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
ADT, is that average daily traffic?
Traffic, yes, correct.
Average daily, like,
Yeah.
numbers of cars?
Numbers of car in a
That
day.
helps me
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
all this data. Thank you. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do the data points include bicyclists, like non-car entities?
No.
No.
The radar that we use for traffic calming studies doesn't consider those, doesn't look at those. Because it measures the length, it also measures the length of the vehicle. So it's taking that into account as well.
Okay, so, because I live on Claude Court, and occasionally we'll have ATVs, two-wheelers shooting down the road. Are they being considered, or?
Yes, and the radar does provide the speed and also the size of the vehicle.
Right.
And we can identify those. We've done it in the past for different programs, different things, but yes.
Yeah. And for reference, my daughter has a little blue push car, and I was able to get that, so we have the radar right on our road. I was able to get it up to 11 miles an hour running it. So, that's what I'm saying.
Impressive.
I hope that's not a data point, but.
We don't use those for the official traffic calming study.
She loved it.
Can I ask a question, just so I know where we're headed? Because there are a ton of slides, and there's a ton of data in here. And so what I'm seeing, when I look at the areas, so you've highlighted the specific areas, and you're showing that the average or the highest, or what, like when it says 28.6
So
miles per hour, is that one moment, or?
that's an actual study for 7 days that Greg did for each one of these locations.
So
So
are
that
they
this-
averages, though? Like,
Yes.
what is
That's the 85th percentile for that section.
85th
Yeah.
percentile? Okay.
So based on our traffic calming policy, and I'll let Greg go over the data in a minute here, but if we were to receive an application for traffic calming, that section of Melody that says 33.6 qualifies for traffic calming solutions. So,
Does the one below it that says 30.4?
yes. Technically all of them,
Okay, and why do they qualify again?
because they're over the 5 miles an hour that the traffic calming asks for. So it's a 25 mile an hour road, and the traffic calming states anything 5 and above qualifies for traffic calming solutions.
That's nice.
Yeah. So,
That it doesn't include
yeah.
ticket. 5 miles over.
so I'll let Greg, is there any other questions?
I'm just joking. Go ahead. Keep going.
So I'll let Greg go over what he did, the studies, the areas, and what he found when he changed the time of the studies from 7 days to 1 day and stuff like that. Oh, yeah.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. I don't think many of you know me, but I've met a few of you. I'm the traffic engineer for the City of North Glen. I put a lot of this presentation together. So I hope you love traffic calming, because we have quite a few slides. So first we have Melody here, south of 104th, all the way through to Huron. I set 4 radars at the same time, so this is during the same consecutive 7 days. So the north is on the right there. So in the northernmost portion, that's the portion right behind the high school, we've got an average daily traffic of 2446, and we have the highest 85th percentile of 33.6 miles per hour, which is 8.6 miles per hour over the speed limit. And the rest of Melody it gets lower ADT as you go through, and the 85th percentile remains at about 30.4 miles per hour. And to touch on that, no need for speed on Melody last year. The 85th percentile there was 29.8. That was, I think, during the summer. And this is during the school year. So, I mean, it's hovering around 30 miles per hour, just a little bit below, just a little bit below, above. So that is Melody. We have a big problem up north, but the rest is borderline. And here's the comparison, I won't go through it all, but the comparison between the 7-day data and the two different 1-day studies on the same study. And you see the 85th percentile remains pretty much the same on every single test, except for, I think I got a little laser here. On the second one for this north, we had an 85th percentile of the 7-day of 30.4, but on the single day, we have 29.8 and 29.8. But the rest stayed exactly the same, which was pretty fascinating to see that the 7-day and the 1-day are very, very close to each other. And moving on to Irma, the north is on the right, and that's at 120th, and then we have 112th all the way to the left. And you see the problem areas on Irma are near, which makes sense, near 120th and near 112th, where we have 32.3 and 32.9. And in the middle, where we have stop signs at Malley and Phillips, and there's also the school zone, we have lower speeds near 30, but sort of straddling that 30 mile per hour mark. And under the traffic calming policy we have now, it takes a maximum of 2,500 average daily traffic. And as you can see on Irma, everything is above almost 4,000. And on some days, it's over 5,000. Yep, 5,000. Here's the, I guess, comparison on the 7-day to the 1-day on Irma. Pretty similar. I mean, there's a few that changed a bit, but relatively consistent, the 1-day and the 7-day. And moving on to Fox Run, we have the northern portion near 112th on the right. The northern portion near 112th on the left, 104th on the right. So we have the worst part on Fox Run, which we've done a few, maybe 3 or 4 studies all throughout Fox Run over the past year. The area where I get by far the worst speeds are this straightaway near 104th, where you can see it's near 35 miles per hour, which is almost 10 miles above the posted speed limit. And it's because it's a straightaway, you're coming right off 104th, they're trying to make the light. Makes sense that that's the highest speed. And then we have the rest of Fox Run isn't nearly as bad as that 34.8. The worst probably near the trail north in this area, where we consistently see around 30, sometimes a little below 30 miles per hour. And here's the comparisons, which are in line with Irma and Melody. Mostly consistent, mostly the same, a few off. But it's fascinating to see the 1-day and the 7-day match up quite nicely. Actually, now would be a good spot to take questions because we're changing topics a little bit.
Perfect. Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you can go back to slide or page 9, please.
Which one was that?
That would be the visual graphic of Melody Drive.
There we go.
And I just want to square something that, again, I'm referring back to that meeting, which I'm forgetting now, I guess it was last fall-ish. But, you know, some of the residents were saying, gee, you know, you got a lot of speed demons that are coming down and racing down that hill from North Glen High School and then just taking that turn like a banshee out of hell.
Right there.
And yet, when I look at this data, it doesn't seem to support that sort of notion. You know, most of the speeding is happening as you're getting close to 104th there.
Yeah.
So is this an artifact perhaps of residents and their visual observation? And I remember Chief one time telling me that, yeah, when cars are coming around a curve, whatever it is about the function of human eyesight or our anatomy or how our brains process visualization, going around curves makes cars look like they're going faster. Do you agree with that statement? And I'm asking you,
Oh, yes, me.
the traffic expert.
And I believe so. We've heard a lot of noise about the trail at Fox Run, where it's very curvy. And we've consistently gotten 85th percentile speeds, 29 to 30 and a half, which is not nearly as bad as certain straightaways, which don't get as much attention so yeah, I would agree that turning corners make cars appear to go a little bit faster.
You know, I think this is I really like your analysis and how it's visual. And I just wish, and of course, we all wish, maybe hindsight 2020 is, this would have been a wonderful graphic to present in that meeting. I think that would have helped to correct some misperceptions, if you will. And I don't know what the intent here is to follow up with those residents, but definitely I think this might be helpful to keep this in your back pocket or intentionally present this to help correct some misperceptions.
All right, Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. So I don't know how much of this is a question. I just think that I like the fact that that's showing that the 7-day and the 1-day are closed, but you know, we often get people who complain that when the results come back that it's like, you know, 4/10 lower than what would trigger something. So I'm just wondering if you think it would be beneficial to do 2 days or maybe some kind of a policy that if it's within, you know, like 1.5 points of the cutoff that we do another day, or, you know, are we still looking at like different ways of kind of dealing with that issue?
Actually we have recommendations a little later in that
Okay.
presentation if you want to wait, or we can.
I'll wait,
We
I'll
can
wait.
touch on that now.
I probably just forgot that was there.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah. All right, let's see. All right, this is our current traffic calming toolbox. This is sort of a visual representation. I'll go over them all in a little detail. But we have road diet or striping, speed radar signs, speed humps, raised crosswalks, traffic circles, medians, both large and small, speed trailers, and of course, enforcement from the police. And these are potential, which I'll go over a little bit later, things that we don't have in North Glen, but we could. Chokers or curb extensions, lateral shifts, chicanes, diagonal diverters, raised intersections, forced turn islands, half closures, and speed enforcement vans. So road diet or striping, which is sort of the most common one. You've probably seen it. It's all around the city. Irma, Fox Run was recently striped, the double yellow line down the middle, white lines separating driving lanes and biking lanes or parking lanes. It's been shown to lower speeds in the city of North Glen. It's low costs, easy to modify, short construction timeline. The cons are pretty low. It needs to be restrapped with wear. Design is in-house, and as you can see, it's very popular in the city. It's all over. We've got speed radar signs. Speed limit sign with an LED screen providing drivers speeds with warning alerts to provide an added level of speed awareness. So if drivers are getting complacent, they could just, I mean, that sign lets them know that they're going too fast and they slow down. Some of the pros, it's a short construction timeline, small footprint, solar powered, provides drivers with immediate feedback. The cons, they could be ignored by drivers who drive through there every day and don't care. Design is in-house, cost is a little higher, but not bad. And you've seen them on, a few on Irma, Fox Run, Claude, and all around the city. Speed humps, just raised asphalt hump spanning the entire width of the road. They force drivers to slow down or else it's gonna really mess up their car. Sort of a medium cost on short spans, but it can be a high cost on long stretches. Cons, increased noise as vehicle pass over and accelerates, and drivers may speed in between the humps or divert onto other roads and speed on those. Some examples, I mean, it's all throughout Claude and 112th and some on Livingston. We've got raised crosswalks, which is similar to a speed hump, but also a dual purpose of a crosswalk, and it's a bit wider. It's pros, it's safer pedestrian crossing, and it slows vehicles down. Cons, it's a higher cost than a speed hump, longer construction timeline, increased noise, et cetera. We have a few on 112th and Marion. Traffic circles, which are relatively new to the city of North Glen, at least the smaller neighborhood traffic circles. Just raised circular medians constructed at residential intersections, sort of paired with a splitter island and yield signage. The pros, it can reduce speeds at the intersection of two streets, slower turning speeds, and safer pedestrian crossings. Cons, it's a very high cost, long construction timeline, and it's difficult for emergency vehicles to navigate the turns. I think we had some issues with the fire department with that. And some drivers are not familiar with traffic circles and can get confused. Higher cost, and they're on Marion and Cuevas. Medians and islands, these are mostly on arterials. We don't have too many examples of this on residential streets simply because of driveways and left turns being blocked. But it's a raised island located in the middle of the street that narrows the lanes. It's only ideal on wider residential streets, otherwise you're getting rid of parking, which is no good. Pros, it can create pedestrian refuge at crossings, narrows lanes, which forces vehicles to slow down. Cons, high cost, long construction timeline, restricts left turns in and out of driveways, increased maintenance if landscaped, and the application on residential streets is very restrictive. High cost, and there's some on, as far as, in terms of residential streets, I've really only seen them on Fox Run at the entrance and exits. Otherwise, it's mostly at arterials. And we've got the speed trailer, which we place, we have two of them that we place at different locations that we've deemed to be problems, speeding-wise. So we can deploy them, we can have a rotating schedule. They could be here, there, over there, and over there. They're solar-powered. Same with the speed radar signs, provides drivers with immediate feedback on their speeds, and they can be quickly and easily moved to any location needed. The cons, they can be ignored. The flashing lights can impact neighborhoods, and it's a short-term solution. And the varying locations we use them are Grant, Melody, Irma, Fox Run, Pecos, and others as needed. And enforcement, which Northern Police Department has a few patrol who pull vehicles over, write tickets, et cetera. Onto the potential traffic calming toolbox. Chokers or curb extensions, which are a horizontal extension of the curb into the street, resulting in a narrower roadway section. And It shortens pedestrian crossing distances, leads to narrow roads and tighter turning radii, and forces vehicles to slow. The cons, it's a high cost and long construction timeline. We've got a lateral shift, which is one lane shift that is placed to force drivers to steer left or right out of the straight travel path. Navigating curves can force drivers to slow down and it can be aesthetically pleasing. And the cons, which will be a running theme, are high cost and long construction timeline. We got chicanes, which is a series of alternating curves or lane shifts, which is a series of lateral shifts, basically, which are located to force drivers to steer back and forth out of the straight travel path. Same pros and cons as the lateral shift, and can have a negative impact on emergency response times as well. We got diagonal diverters, which is a physical barrier placed diagonally across a four-legged intersection. The barrier creates two unconnected intersections, so it can cut through traffic and can reduce speeds near the intersection. High cost, long construction timeline, delay in emergency vehicles, increased travel time for locals. We've got raised intersection, similar to a raised crosswalk, except it's at a entire intersection, but a flat raised area covering an entire intersection with ramps on all approaches. Can reduce speeds near intersection and safer pedestrian crossing. However, it's high cost, long construction timeline, and there are potential drainage issues near these intersections. We've got a forced turn island, a raised island that blocks certain movements on approaches to an intersection. Can reduce cut-through traffic, can improve pedestrian safety, but it's high cost, long construction timeline, delaying emergency vehicles, and may increase U-turns. I've got a half closure, physical barrier that blocks vehicles traveling in one direction, i.e. creates a one-way street for a short distance on an otherwise two-way street. Can reduce cut-through traffic, can improve pedestrian safety, but high cost, long construction timeline, delay in emergency vehicles, and potential drainage issues. And we've got the speed enforcement van, which I know has been floated around the city before. It's a van equipped with mobile speed radars, cameras, and staff to detect and report speeding vehicles that drive by. The pros, the visual presence of the van alone can reduce speeds of drivers, and the money from the tickets go to the city. The cons, sudden braking after drivers see the van can result in more accidents, and it's a large monetary investment. And some comments on this. Under Colorado law, the maximum penalty for a speed violation, 10 miles per hour or over, with these vans is $40. However, the photo speed van maximum is doubled in a school zone. Also, Colorado law states that if vehicles are going less than 10 miles per hour, a warning must be issued. And here's a few traffic calming measures that are not allowed. 3D crosswalks, which are used as sort of optical illusions. I don't know if you've seen them before, but sort of create a crosswalk with a few different colors to make it look 3D. The reason it's not allowed is because they're not compliant with the MUTCD, which sets standards for road markings and equipment. And according to one Federal Highway Administration study, showed a significant percentage of drivers swerved when seeing the markings, and that over time, as many as 1 in 10 drivers might make an evasive or erratic maneuver seeing it for the first time. So it's very unusual, very striking, and people will freak out. Not allowed are fluorescent pavement markings. So fluorescent materials added to the pavement markings to enhance nighttime visibility. The standard for pavement markings in Colorado, fluorescent markings deteriorate rapidly over time and are not approved by the MUTCD. Another thing not allowed are certain paint colors on pavement. The only paint colors that can be used in the city of North Glen would be 3 colors. We got green for bike lanes. What is that? I think there's purple for tolls and red for public transportation. Any other color is not allowed. And another one that's not allowed for traffic calming are stop signs. Stop signs cannot be used as a traffic calming measure. Stop signs installation is more in line with safety concerns at an intersection, like pedestrian safety, not the speed through there. Engineering studies must be done prior to the installation of stop signs. And the last thing that's not allowed are resident installed devices, which is pretty self-explanatory. Anything a resident does without the approval of the city, throwing out their own speed humps or spray painting the road or whatever, not allowed. And this would be a good spot for questions as we're going to talk about street-specific.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard, so I've seen, again, I live on Claude, and seen at times people will put out the little kid things, you know, caution, kids. at
Little
play.
turtles,
Yeah, turtles or the little, you know,
flags.
yeah, things like that. Are those things not allowed?
Not as far as for the purpose of this program. I mean, people can put them in front of their houses, but it's not something that the city would go out and do for them.
Right.
Let's say, let's put 20 turtles along 115th, because as a traffic calming measure, no, that's not
Okay,
a,
so like it's kind of the temporary thing.
Yeah.
But if it's, they can't have a permanent structure.
exactly.
Gotcha, thank you.
That was it?
So-
Good.
All right, we're going to go into the street-specific traffic calming toolbox, and we're going to be talking about Melody, Irma, and Fox Run. Just as a disclaimer, I think we've covered it earlier, but the following traffic calming options are for illustrative purposes only. They are not necessarily specific recommendations for these areas. The options presented are a result of the cross-functional team discussion and input. So here is Melody, and we have the northern part on the right. So we're gonna be talking about a restriping option, raised crosswalk options, sort of a couple different chokers, striping choker or lateral shift, curb extension. We're gonna be covering traffic circles, speed humps, a raised intersection, green bike lanes, and a chicane. So as you know, Melody right now has the sort of a middle lane. So it has, you can kind of see it on here. So it has, let's go through it all. So we have a parking lane, bike lane, buffer, driving lane, middle lane, driving lane, buffer, bike lane, parking. And what a proposed striping would be to get rid of that middle lane and push traffic inward so they're right next to each other like this. But with that extra space, we could create a extra buffer on the other side of the bike lane. And also, we could paint the bike lanes green as well. However, stripping and restriping the entirety of Melody would be a pretty expensive undertaking. Estimates being $200,000 to $250,000. And it would be pretty long construction as well. But that would be restriping option. We have the speed hump option as well. If we wanted to put speed humps on the entirety of Melody, it would be a total of 12 speed humps from 104th to Huron. If we were to do that, it would be roughly $150,000 to $220,000 for all 12, or $12,000 to $18,000 per speed hump if we only wanted to do speed humps in certain problem areas, might not be necessary on the entirety of Melody. We have raised crosswalk. We have two areas, two trail crossings, which we could put a raised crosswalk. They'd be here and further south after the curve. So it'd be about $30,000 to $50,000 for both crosswalks, or $15,000 to $25,000 per. A 2 to 3 month construction timeline, and we would recommend both of those. We have the traffic circles. Melody only has three-way intersections throughout, so traffic circles aren't ideal because it gets rid of quite a bit of parking, and there's also the issue of residents needing to back in to the roundabout or being blocked from turning left because of the approaches of the roundabout. So because of those two and the very high cost of the roundabouts, we would not recommend roundabouts. I mean, if we, for instance, if we do 3 traffic circles, that would be, I mean, it could be north of $500,000. We have a curb extension shown here at that 100th and Melody turn, which is a heavily used turn, as we can see with the striping wearing off, because people like to cut that corner quite a bit. And what this would do is slow them down so they have to make more of a 90-degree turn, making this intersection a little bit more safer. However, with this drainage dip already right here, that already slows people down, so this wouldn't help too much with slowing vehicles down. It'd help a little bit, but it would be mostly with the intersection crossing safety. This is a bit of a weird idea, but it's a bit of a chicane using striping, where we would basically go from having the middle lane to not having the middle lane, making drivers shift laterally. And then, oh, there's only one of them. Shift laterally, and we could shift a couple times. What makes it difficult with this is the islands needed to show drivers that traffic is diverting, could block driveways. And here's another variation of the chicane. The city of Thornton has a similar chicane to this. I think it's maybe a couple miles away from this, but at this cul-de-sac, you have a little island and a couple chokers straddling it, making drivers go in, then out, then back in, then back out, which would slow drivers in this area. This chicane right here would be about $50,000. And here we have the raised intersection. This is at the intersection with Fred, I believe. We don't recommend this simply because it doesn't help with the straightaways, and this intersection already right here is a stop sign. And the cost is very high, could be as high as $160,000 per. And there would be also the issue with this resident pulling out to this raised section is a bit of a design hassle. And that was Melody, and I could take questions on Melody before moving on to Fox Run, if anyone has
On
anything.
Melody. I mean, I have a question. So can you speak to why some of the other, I mean, because you kind of went through, we have this, we could use this, that's probably not a good idea kind of thing. Some of the ideas in the presentation are not mentioned.
Yes.
Like, for example, I'll just throw one out. A median, Melody seems wide enough.
Yes.
Is there a reason that
So
wasn't considered?
So we have a few reasons and a few ideas. So if we were to do a median on Melody right here, we could use the center lane as a median. However, say a resident right here is trying to get to their home, they can't turn left into their driveway. So they are gonna have to maybe make a crazy illegal U-turn or have to go in the other way. It's just gonna annoy a lot of the residents on Melody if we were to put any sort of median on Melody. So it just blocks driveways is the reason we don't do that. Also, another one was a half closure, which is one I didn't cover here because I don't think we want to close Melody halfway through. We just don't think in the engineering department that's a good idea. I mean, it'd be a problem for emergency vehicles and residents would be very angry.
I might have missed it, but is there, if this is so on whatever slide 39 with all the multiple strategies, Is that gonna be presented to that community beforehand or no?
Oh, 1 second. Talking about,
Okay, I'm just checking. I mean, they might have opinions.
and before we install traffic calming measures, we usually have a community meeting and get the input.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a clarification on all these options, because a lot of those were not recommended. So it's more just if you were to put it, this is where it would go kind of thing, but it's not recommended, but they're on this.
Where we put them isn't necessarily where we would put them. It's more of a visual representation. But, I mean, for example, I mean, the raised crosswalks would be where we put them. If we decided on this chicane, that would be the only place where we could put that. Speed humps could be placed not only here, but throughout. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly where we would recommend it. Not necessarily, but mostly.
Okay, so you're not proposing do all?
Oh, no.
I know it says not do all the things, but
Make Melody a traffic calming
there's like 3
museum.
points of speed humps. So speed humps would be all throughout.
I mean, they could be, or they could only be in this spot where we found that it's.
Okay.
I mean, it would be, yeah, we're not there yet, but.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yo. There we go. Now, Irma is more narrow, so it was a bit more of a challenge to come up with solutions here. So, I mean, mostly we're looking at chokers, raised intersections, and speed humps. Really the only 3 that work on Irma. So we have raised intersections shown here. Similar, 130,000, 160,000 per. The con here is that, I mean, some of these intersections are 4-way stops, so they're not gonna slow down people going up here or over here where we found speeding to be an issue. Only slows people down near the intersection is a con of that. But safer pedestrian crossings and all that. Here's another one. Here's, I think this is Phillips, where we recently just striped Phillips. And we could also add the stop prior to the stop sign as a little added safety measure. And here's another one. I mean, these raised intersections are a bit of a challenge at 3-way intersections. And Irma, same as Melody, has quite a few 3-ways as well. But as you can see here, I think this is Malley, they already have the stop prior to the stop sign. So we can just do that at Phillips as well. And here's another. All right. And it might be a little difficult to see these chokers, but right here and right here. So just a raised concrete curb, sort of putting it in the parking lane. I try to do it near intersections as to not take away parking too much. But with this, we'd also put signage in them with sort of yellow square, sort of shaped as a diamond, to put signs closer to Irma, which would, I mean, get in the driver's heads that the road is a little bit more narrow, is the gist of this. But, I mean, per choker is 6,000 to 9,000 per. If you want to do, say, 17 of these, which is what I have in there now, would be $100,000 to $150,000 and 3 to 4 month construction timeline. And what I like with these is we could put them near existing crossings right here, where, I mean, now we have these crosswalk signs on the sidewalk. With these chokers, we could put the signs closer to the road, sort of making these school crossings a little bit safer. Yep. Gotcha. got a whole bunch of chokers here, choker, choker, choker. And speed humps, similar to 10, 14,000 per. For the entirety of Irma, it would cost $150,000. And we're just gonna blast through Fox Run and then take questions at the end. So Fox Run only covered 3 different options since speeding wasn't as big of an issue here as it was on Melody and Irma. But in this straightaway section where the 85th percentile was close to 35, and the only thing that makes sense to us would be speed humps to slow traffic down there. We have the trail crossing, which we could put a raised crosswalk for additional safety. And another choker crosswalk up there. So similar to Irma, we have a crosswalk with a little choker with the signs close to the road. Raised crosswalk at that trail. And a few speed humps. There would be another one down here, but it's blocked off on this straightaway, which is the big issue on Fox Run, where we consistently see. And here were the sort of potential changes to the data collection. Test only when school is in session to be in line with Thornton and Broomfield. Test only on days void of inclement weather. And start the process with a preliminary one-day test. Since we saw the one-day test is very similar to the 7-day, we could start off with a one-day test. And if the results are below 29 miles per hour, we could say that automatically doesn't qualify. If the results are above 31, we could say it automatically qualifies with that one-day test. However, if the results are borderline between 29 and 31, we can proceed with a full 7-day test just to be sure. And that could be a way that we can, since we're with the school schedule restricting our data collection to August to May, not counting winter break, spring break, autumn break, it really limits our days we can test. So with this, we can test more and stay ahead of the game.
Can you remind me why you only test during school?
It's just to get the most accurate depiction of, I guess, traffic in the area. We got a lot of comments at the No Need for Speed on Melody that we tested during the summer, and there's not school traffic there, so the results aren't as, I guess, accurate as they can be. And since school's in session more than it's not, it makes sense to test it then.
Can you remind me, is it 24 hours?
It's a 24-hour
Test.
test for 7 straight days. Collects everything.
So when you were saying, let's see if didn't lose this. If you do a one-day test and the results are between 29 and 30 miles per hour, do you get that data quickly enough that you just go right into the 7 days, or does it involve moving everything and moving it back, or how do you see that happening?
Yeah, we could, actually. The radar can stay on the pole, and we can collect the data from the pole, see that the 85th percentile is in between there, so we can just leave it on there. Probably replace the battery just in case, but it can stay on the pole.
Yeah, it seems like that would be more efficient, but I was just curious if there was a reason that wouldn't work.
No, it'd work.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Mayor. If we can go back to Irma Drive. All right. Okay. So, former Councilmember Becky Brown, she was really passionate about the intersection of Irma and Malley. And we looked into raised intersections back when that was something that we were thinking about, because people just wouldn't stop there, especially going straight on Irma. Years back, there wasn't stop signs there. So I think some people just still treated it that way.
Yeah.
Some people just go right through it. I think that would be something we looked at, but I think they mentioned that it might be affecting that home right there. Mm-hmm. And their driveway and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, both driveways.
Yeah. So that's something that, it'd be great, but that's something that we ran into, one of the issues in the past.
And Yeah, and we did look into it back then, and we actually went and talked to all the homeowners on every corner. And I think there's we talked to about 6 homeowners and presented that option to them. And I think we also talked about adding maybe like a raised crosswalk, and they all said that they wouldn't like that. They just asked for striping back then.
Okay.
Just so you know, just so we know.
Okay, cool. And then you mentioned speed humps, and I'm on Irma, but it's say a minor collector street. Would you guys call it that? So would that affect plowing and? Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't recommend speed humps on Irma simply because the traffic. I mean, there's 5,000, sometimes upwards of 6,000 vehicles a day traveling on there. And we fear that putting speed humps will divert traffic off and create speeding problems elsewhere.
Okay, and I was looking at this map. I wasn't sure if it was Bowman or Phillips for a raised intersection number 2 on the.
This one? And this one's Phillips.
So Phillips also has the 2 dips as well. Trying to think how that would work with the raised.
Yeah, it would definitely be quite the challenge.
Yeah.
And considering it's already a 4-way stop, it's not something we would recommend as well.
And the dips, which I think that are great. Running that stop sign. And then you mentioned the chokers by the crosswalks. Yeah, would we be able to get the flashing crossing beacons there too? I
think that could be an option, right?
It's.
Yeah,
something.
that could be an option. That could be a measure we can implement.
Okay, cool.
And probably, yeah, near the school would be the place to do it.
Okay, another question I had is, this isn't for Irma, but possibly could be. There's a lot of issues at Malley Drive Elementary for people that park too close to the intersection, and then people turning, like there's no visibility.
Oh, gotcha.
Could chokers be utilized in that sense?
And they could prevent drivers from parking too close to intersections.
Could that be something we can, possibly look at, but even though it's in a school zone, I don't know if that.
Yeah, I know parking's quite the issue there.
I don't know if that messes it up being in a school zone. I know we looked at Malley Drive before in the past,
Yeah.
but that's something I'm throwing out because I'm just going down the toolbox and seeing what's
Yeah,
available
what
here
could
and
work.
there. But, okay, great. Well, it'd be nice to have those, a lot of this stuff implemented, but unfortunately, this
Yeah.
probably, the speed bumps won't happen, but, I think probably raised intersection would be the best, because I've seen it working on 112th and 112th Place. When I come around there on the trail, yeah, it does make me want to slow down and look for a pedestrian
Yeah.
crossing too, so, I think that's a great tool in the toolbox. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Walker?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm just kind of curious here for the staff recommendation. This says you're looking for feedback on the new tools and options presented. You presented some ones we have, some options you don't recommend, and I'm just curious, what all were the new tools you guys went out and found?
Well, the new tools, I think, are on slide 16. The choker, lateral shift chicane, diagonal diverter, raised intersections, forced turn islands, half closures.
And I would add, Councilmember Walker, that's the combination thereof,
There
of
what?
multiple tools.
Okay.
So for illustrative purposes, you see a lot of different tools being used on the roadways that we've illustrated for you tonight. I would say with our current toolbox, we've had a pretty strict formula of road diet, speed humps. And so we really tried to think outside of the box and figure out how we can not only bring in potential tools, but also the use of them in combination with one another.
All right, and so when it says you're looking here for feedback on the new tools and options, are you looking for feedback on the exact placements of these, or where is this gonna go? Kinda
Well, I wouldn't
curious.
say exact placement. We can
just
come back. This
curious where
is
this
the
is
first
going.
conversation, but Jason can help answer your question.
I don't know if this answers it, but things that we don't have, support of council at this moment, to use kind of a variety of tools that we haven't normally presented or discussed. The mayor mentioned something that was perfect segue into longer-term future conversations of, these might be lovely, but how is that gonna be presented to the community to get their buy-in? Is that something that council's just gonna say, no, these look awesome, here's what we're gonna do? Or get feedback from the community? And also, these haven't been like fully vetted as a perfect structured like concept, as we said, that here's some new things that we were presenting. But engineers will take a lot more time to identify exactly the right placements and locations of things. So not looking for, I think, looking for, hey, these concepts make sense. Yes, please, if we're able to, utilize them. Other thing that we don't have funding to do all these things. So that's the one piece that we're looking for feedback, unless there's something on there that you're like, we would absolutely never want X, Y, or Z in our community. Don't even, suggest that as an idea. So that's kind of the feedback, I guess, that we're looking for tonight's purposes.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to ask for further clarification because I went back to the purpose slide and I have gotten lost in the weeds, lost in the data, lost in the slides, lost in a lot of information and trying to figure out again what we're supposed to be doing. I think can you speak to the strategy of giving us a map with ideas that you don't recommend? I'm still stuck on that one. Like I see that there's, like if we take Melody as an example, and we could do this here, we could do this here, we don't want to do this here, but here's a picture of it. And same thing on Irma, I was so confused, I'm watching the slides and it's like, here's all these speed bumps, but we're not going to do speed bumps on Irma. So I'm just confused about the strategy to put them all together.
Yeah, I'll let the engineers speak to that.
Yeah, no, I'd love to know your thinking on that.
So I guess what we're trying to show is everything that can be put out there. We personally don't recommend certain things because of residents or because of the traffic pattern. But at the end of the day, we believe that if it's the will of the council for us to implement something like, let's say, speed humps on Irma, we just had to do it with all the information out there. Just know that if we decide to put speed humps, it's not impossible, we can do it. But if we decide to speed humps on Irma, that might divert traffic to some of the other streets and we're gonna start hearing from them. If we put speed humps on Irma, then we might start getting complaints from the people that use Irma to get from 120 to 112. What are you guys doing? This is my commute. Now it takes me 5 more minutes to get through this neighborhood. Now I have to turn left or right here to avoid these speed humps. So we as engineers don't recommend certain things that we presented here, but they are doable. We just gotta be aware that a resident might not like it, or that area or that group of residents might have an issue with that. I'll use an example on Livingston, when we put the speed humps. The way we laid them out was every 500 feet. One of those happened to be halfway through a driveway. That person immediately called me, and I had to go out there with Kyle, and we ended up moving the speed hump a little bit further down because it affected that one resident specifically. So we could do it, we just gotta be aware that everyone might not be happy with what we do.
Okay, so that's an interesting example. I would think that it probably wouldn't have been put there in the first place, just looking at the neighborhood. But so what I think through the process is council has taken a ton of feedback in from residents, a ton. And we have said, these are areas where speeding is happening and we're not doing anything. Please come and give us some solutions. Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure. So I think the will of council is that you do find a creative solution so that we can help our residents. And we're never gonna make everybody happy, right? The fast drivers are happy right now. And the people that get to work fast are happy right now, but it's not safe. So when I think about this presentation, I'm trying to figure out a path forward. So you have data collection changes. So that's the first one you want feedback on. Then, do we like the new toolbox options? And then number 3 is a little confusing to me because it says traffic calming options. Like, do you want us to give you specific ones we think are the best based on what you just told us, or what is required here?
I think that those would roll together with number 2 if there were, additional items that we haven't, the chicane concept or whatnot, to say, yeah, that would be something that we'd be interested in. We'd want to go take a look at how that would play out. I think another note, through some of the presentation is these wouldn't be all at once. There might be some opportunities to say, we talked about Melody, and we said, hey, on that northern side, that's where it seems like speeding is, worse than the rest of the road. And maybe that's an opportunity for us to take a look at what kind of fixes would be prioritized in that location to see if there would be an impact. With the policy that we've done so far, we know that striping and signage has been helpful. And this is just taking it to one more level with some of the newer ideas that the engineers have presented tonight.
Okay, well, we have more questions. I'll circle back. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm going to take a shot at kind of what you're asking here. Data collection, I think I like your guys' idea of kind of moving from the 7-day to the 1-day. I think that seems to make sense. And then kind of adding if it's kind of in that area, you extend that. I think that makes sense. Additional toolbox options, I like the options, kind of bringing in things like chokers, things like that. And I'm gonna deal specifically with Irma since that's kind of in my ward. On slide 68, you kind of come in with, okay, here's the options that we're kind of recommending. I would love to do all of those things, right? So, maybe kind of from here, again, I think you've kind of put some old stuff in there and some new things, right? Which is great, chokers as an example. And so going forward, if we're looking at kind of the third option that you guys were looking for, more specifically, packages, kind of, here's A, B, and C. Like if would we kind of like a need to have, like here's what would make the most impact right now versus kind of would love to have, right? Obviously, I'd love to have everything on this list, but, budget-wise, probably can't do that. But here's what we could kind of implement that makes the most sense. So I'm kind of answering number 3 of saying, yes, I like where you guys are at, and show me some more of that. Show me kind of what that might cost and kind of look like. I do have a question with regard to, would there have to be kind of, since some of these might be unorthodox or people haven't seen, there might have to be kind of additional education around that might have to be included in mailers, whatever, not necessarily mailers, but the newspaper that comes out. So that's something to consider. And you mentioned Irma not having speed humps because of the amount of traffic. Is it possible that people use Irma, that it has more traffic because people can be like, well, it's kind of a straight shot, it's a cut through for me, I can avoid Colorado, so I'll shoot down Irma. So would speed humps kind of decrease some of that?
I think we go back to the same issues that we have with when we did speed humps on Claude. Claude used to be kind of an alternate to Irma to go from 120th down to 112. When we put speed humps on Claude, all that traffic, or a lot of that traffic, we saw move somewhere else. So it could be the same thing that happens with Irma. The problem with Irma that we have two schools in that area. And I think that's the biggest driver of that volume, is the school traffic, not the people trying to cut through. It's mostly the people are coming to those schools and pick up their kids, and every day they do that. So,
So would that, and I don't know, I'm just gonna say it, would that discourage people from, if you're not a North Glen resident, you don't necessarily, and I don't know how the schools work. It used to be like, if you live close to that school, you went to that school.
Not anymore.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
would that discourage people from kind of sending their kids? It's like, oh, it's too much trouble to get there.
I can't speak to that. I don't think so. I don't think a couple speed humps will deter me from taking my kids to the school that is more convenient for me, but maybe.
Okay, I mean, are we killing two birds with one
Yeah.
stone here?
Yeah. Yeah, it could, the speed humps could definitely discourage people from driving on Irma and take alternate route. Our biggest concern is that traffic moving to the side streets, and then we get that increased volume of traffic on those ones, and we get that cascade effect. Now they move to this street, and then this street is asking us to do something there. Because before the speed humps, there was no traffic. There's no issue on my street before you put the speed humps. That's the kind of the things that we hear when we put speed hump down. Now they're taking my street because you put speed humps here or there.
Right. And I gotta say, and this is my last point, that living on Claude Court and having those speed bumps, the one thing I think I regret about where we live is the speed. I worry terribly about my daughter on that street. She's learning to ride a bike, she'll go shooting down the driveway, even with speed humps, it scares the crap out of me. So I can only imagine what people on Irma are going through without having any of those speed bumps, having things that, and does it, I'm driving up and down, does it ruin my transmission? So what? I'd rather that than someone racing down that street. And they still race, like you guys said, they still race between the speed humps. I have the little flashing police thing right across the street. Okay.
I think that's why we have that as an option there.
Sure.
I mean, it is an option.
Sure. So,
Councilmember Condo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, in regards to your slide 66, changes to data collection policy. The only other recommendation that I would like to ask you to consider is, I think you do, if a speed study fails, you have a one-year embargo. And in the case of the one on Melody, that was done in July, so that means the next time that they could do it is July of this year. And I think that 1 year maybe should be shortened to 9 months or something, so that you could actually perform a new speed study within a school year, as opposed to, oh, shoot, now you're stuck in the middle of the summer. You know what I mean? So that's the only recommendation I have there. My second ask is, and I'm gonna put on my liaison to North Metro Fire, is please, whatever you decide to do, make sure you coordinate with North Metro Fire, especially if you consider doing a rotary or something that might have an impact on the turning radius. And by the way, North Glen is not the only offender. I sat through a North Metro board meeting last month where Broomfield goofed. So let's try not to repeat the mistakes of other cities or us, for that matter. Let's make sure we coordinate with the right people. Thank you.
And to your point about the school year, I think that's something that we're considering, just having, instead of once a year, just once per school year. That way, you don't fall within those summer months, and you also, for one, are not asking for one study in November and one in March. So you get, I think that would be a good idea, just making it one per school year. It's still that year, but it could fall any time during the school year, I guess.
Yep, thank you.
So I'm still concerned about that piece because we are about ready to head into summer driving and the racing. And when it's nice outside, they drive as fast as they can. And if we're never testing during the summer, I don't know that it's a true picture of what's happening on some of these streets. They're the same kids that live in the neighborhood.
Talk about that, urban SDK. So one other tool that we didn't talk about today, because it's kind of a in-process evaluation, is using a software tool that is out there. The engineer team is evaluating that. They know more about it than I do, but as a layperson, it's a tool that will collect traffic data, this same data that we're talking about here, as far as speed and traffic, every day. And we'll have a map, which is like a visualization of a map that shows, hey, look at that street, and look at how much traffic went, and look at what their average speed was. So the intent will be to add that as a layer of data collection on top of the things that we're doing now, so that we can be more proactive than reactive to residents and concerns if there's opportunity to say, hey, these people on this street are really quiet. They don't complain. But look at that. There is a lot of speeding going on there. We'll be able to see that from a computer, and then give us an opportunity to be more proactive. So even during the school year time frame, we'll still be collecting, well, if we go through and do this, we'll still be able to collect data and see what's happening on every street within the city. And that's a new tool that's under evaluation, and I'm pretty excited about it, not knowing a ton about it yet. But I think the engineering team did a demo of that product, and thought that was pretty cool tool, to help us, not eliminate these studies, but to be ahead of the game a little bit. So that could help alleviate the concept of doing the official studies just during the school year. We would be tracking this data all the time. So.
Okay. Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple of things, we don't have that screen up again that we had before. I'm all for changing the data collection process that we were doing, that was brought up today. And doing it within the school year, that'd be great, I think. I have to say, I'm on the other end of the speed hump thing, and I hate them. They should be the absolute last resort. I understand that according to our police records, they are effective, but I think there are other things that can also be effective. So I just think that's like the last thing to do. And because none of the streets that we talked about tonight are in Ward 3, I think I'm more interested in the process. So I don't really have a whole lot to say on what particular techniques to use on which streets, but I do think we should expand the toolbox. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to come back to us with. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the summer thing, I will give some background for those. I don't know if it's just a Ward 4 thing, but it seems like every single traffic calming testing that was done in meetings, they all said, this was done, this was not done during the school year. And so that's kind of where that comes from. If nobody else has heard, I don't know if Ward 4 is an anomaly. We seem to have a lot of traffic speeding complaints in the neighborhoods there. So I appreciate that, just because you are listening to what the residents' feedback was. So from that perspective, I think that's really great, and thank you for that. I'm excited about software, though, that can track that. I think that's really cool. In terms of the changes to data collection, the one day makes me a little nervous because, again, Ward 4, they all said, well, 7 days wasn't enough. So I understand that this is maybe a pilot of some sort, right? So if it's not working or things go different ways, we can all come back and talk about it again. I know you mentioned maybe a 3-day. I don't want to throw another wrench in there. I would support the 1 day if that's what everybody else wants, but a 3-day might make me feel more comfortable going from a 7-day. But also understanding that we have to be realistic in order to get all of these testings done in different areas. So with that, I would be okay with the 1 day. And I do like the way that you kind of parse it out, you know, above or below, qualifies, doesn't, and we can redo and ramp it back to a 7 day. So that makes me feel better about the 1 day, honestly, if I have to give my input on that. In terms of specific feedback for Melody, I do have one request. And it is probably something that you all already were taking into consideration, but around the 99,000-ish block of Melody where there's the turn, and several cars have plowed into the same home a few times. I just want to make sure that that's, you know, and I'm sure you probably have already considered it, but when you're looking at the remedies, that's taken into consideration, just because it's happened more than once. And it's been, nobody's gotten hurt, but it's been pretty serious devastation. So that would be my only request. I do not like traffic circles. I'll just say that, thinking about Melody, but they've requested speed humps. I hear it from a lot of residents on Melody, and I get the unintended consequences, because I also hear from the residents on Livingston who say they hate it. And I can't back my trailer out because there's a speed hump there. So, yeah, the resident input, I think, is still, or education, however you want to look at that, is still key. Unintended consequences always, right? But as the mayor said, we're not going to make everyone happy. We just have to try to mitigate the speeding. That's my only request, that house. Thank you.
So looking at next steps, you've got the 3 asks. The first one is the potential changes to data collection. If, I don't know, I think if anyone's paying attention, is it worth clarifying that this slide on page 66, is talking about a street that the speed limit is 25, right? So it's not, it doesn't really say that on here, but in case residents were watching, all of these roads have a speed limit of 25?
Correct.
Okay, so it's 4 miles or 6 miles over, okay. Just making sure that's clear. I am a little concerned about the 1 day test. I think if we can get a technological solution to that with whatever the software is, maybe that can just be part of the policy.
So the software will not replace the actual test. So the way the software works is it takes data from connected vehicles, newer vehicles that have all these sensors and like OnStar and stuff like that that actually transmit the data. So what did they say? About 40% of cars have that technology right now. So it's only taking 40% of the cars. On the test that we did, it did come out pretty close to what we're getting with our equipment, but it's not exact, and it's only, like I said, taking into account 40% of the vehicles traveling on the road, because that's data that is coming from these newer vehicles. Your 1995 Toyota Corolla is not sending that.
Okay, that's great information, actually. Thank you for clarifying that. So looking at next steps, when it says data collection changes, is that the only thing that we're updating in the traffic calming policy? Is that one piece?
Yes. The 2 things that came up was the timing, and that's the 1 day, and removing data points below a certain threshold, which we do not recommend. So
Okay.
changing to the timing and this making it only during the school year and on good weather, sunny day, no snow, no rain. That way, that's the most likely traffic pattern that we'll see on that street.
Okay. Is there, not to harp on this, but I just want to make sure, if we're making changes to our traffic calming policy, that we include, because you just talked about the software as a solution, but if newer cars, because a lot of our hot rods are not new, so how do we build in something that includes I just get a lot of people calling me about the drag racing all summer long. So what do we do about that? It's not just drag racing at midnight no, it's not a cop thing. It's not, that's what I'm saying, is they're starting in the neighborhoods. They're starting on Melody, they're starting on Fox Run, they're starting on Irma. I'm not talking about the group meet where they all then take off from there. That's a different problem. But they're driving really fast on a summer night. And if we're never measuring that, is there a place to say if we get resident complaints or, I don't know. I just don't want to hinder us if we're updating our traffic calming policy, we should just update all pieces that make sense.
So, so these changes are just means and methods. It's not the actual policy that we're changing. It's the way that we engineers conduct the studies. That way you guys, when you have your ward meetings, you can tell them, hey, we're doing it this way. We're doing it during the school year because that's where the community wanted it done. We're doing it at a 1 day because that's still representative of what the overall speed on the street is. We're focusing more on the ones that are showing a need for a study. So instead of just doing a 7 day for a street that only it's 85th percentile is 28 miles per hour, and then we lost a whole week on that one street, that something that we could have done in a day, that give us the time to do it, to spend it doing it somewhere else. So that's kind of the changes that we're looking to implement here. More operational changes to allow us to focus more on the streets that show a problem consistently.
Okay, maybe I just won't harp on it. I find it to be a very narrow thing to add to a calming policy, is to specify. I mean, I understand the weather piece because that's a year-round question. I just find that to be a really odd piece, and I don't love it, but if other people want to keep it, that's fine. I think it's also important to know, or at least question, you're not retesting any of these streets. So Irma, Melody, and Fox Run Parkway are tested and data collected, and we're done. So this is a change to future streets?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, I will say I don't like that part, but if other people like it, you can keep it. And then looking at the toolbox options, I mean, it's nice to have more options. My biggest piece of feedback is that as you present the next phase and you bring us the next piece, that it's really clear, because as I look at this body of work, I think, well, there are countless ways to implement a budgeted amount. So if we said, hypothetically, you get $1 million to fix these streets, you could spend that money in 1 million different ways.
Exactly.
And 1 million different phases, and we're gonna start with this street. You could do one whole street and wait to do the other two. You could do the ends or the middle of each street. Like, I just want you to be really thoughtful about what that rollout is, because it sounds like you're gonna bring those recommendations back.
Yep.
And we do have limited funds, but if we can get on it, we need to get on it probably sooner.
So yeah, I guess just to clarify a little bit, the intent of this was to show everything that we could do on these streets.
Okay.
Now, if we want to focus on the areas the most problematic area, like the north section of Melody that sees an 8.5 miles per hour over the speed limit. With limited funds, I think that should be our focus. Just try to focus on the worst areas first, see what we can do there, and see what the community is saying. And then we can move down the lower priority areas.
Okay. Circling back really quickly, you mentioned the upper end of Melody. I just want to clarify, is that where the accidents are happening, or is that where the speed study had the higher amount?
The speed study had the 33.6 miles per hour, which is 8 miles over the speed limit.
Okay.
Closer to 104th.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Well, to be fair, a lot of residents on the south part were complaining about speeding, and I think it came in that 29.8. That's kind of where a whole bunch of discussion happened as well. I mean, it qualifies now, right, for the last study, so I mean, that's, I think, a moot point. But that house is further south, I believe, that turn. So I wouldn't want that neglected, just because that is a concern. And city manager Geyer and I went and saw and watched, and I mean, I just needed to say that. And I'm still not sold on the one day, but thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Roper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think my question is following up. Do we have like tests or data as far as how well these things have worked in other cities?
From other cities, no, we don't have any data from Thornton or
Just because we
Broomfield.
are working with a limited amount of funds, I would like to know what is their efficacy as far as do they prevent what it is we're trying to prevent, or are we just throwing things at the wall and hoping it sticks? It would be beneficial, I think, to know how effective they are.
I would add some perspective that I think we're probably the most aggressive with our traffic calming strategies and tools than surrounding cities. From what I've read of staff's research and from what I know, the scope of traffic calming in other communities is much more limited. And we've expanded over time and are trying to be responsive to council's direction to do more. And so I don't know that, I think any tool that we use, we do evaluate it to make sure it's working. But I don't know that we could say, if you look at this location in Broomfield, that would inform what we're doing here. Because I think we're much more aggressive with deployment of strategies. I mean, the example used earlier with the rotaries, yeah. And the conversation that I had with the firefighters out in the field when we had them test apparatus was, ma'am, we hate the speed humps. We actually don't mind the rotaries. So it's all about perspective too. But North Glen deploying rotaries was much more on the innovative side, and I would use the word aggressive.
Okay, thank you. I just know on my side of town, we have the road diet, and our residents over there are always having something to say about the road diet. And I had one of my neighbors tell me the other day, I'm not sure where to drive. I'm just gonna drive to my lane. And so I think, again, it's just, are we doing things that are working? I would hate to see us throw more money after something that's not working.
Well, and to that point, I think that's a really good question, and I don't know how you would get that data, but I'm thinking there's quite a few Thornton streets that have aggressive approaches. And so it might be interesting to say, you know, what was it like before and what is it like now? And I think to your point about speed humps, some of those roads don't have an alternative. So you just have to take them. Or I have seen call it the chicane thing, right? That's in Thornton. Like, they have a lot of aggressive tools in Thornton. So I don't know, but I don't know if they collected data on, like, this is what it was like before, and this is what it was like now. Some of the neighborhoods are just now being built with them to start with. So, yeah, I don't know if there's data. It's a good question.
Or even on North, do we have data on what it was like before versus now with the road diet?
We do. Before this, the average speeds on Melody before we did this, the striping was around 35, 36 miles an hour. That was the 85th percentile that we were getting back then. I can't say specifically about north or south, but I do remember it was around 35 miles an hour, all throughout Melody.
Good, that's good to know. And if it's something that is working, then again, that's something we educate our residents about, just keep talking to them about how it is working. And also part of it is we narrate the story, get the facts out there.
Well, what else do you need from us to move forward?
I think we are good.
Any other feedback that council wants to provide? You definitely did a ton of research and put together a very nice presentation, very thorough. So, you know, I hope if there's any residents that are watching, that they take a look at the information online, because it is very specific and it answers a lot of questions that we have gotten from residents. So thank you. Oh, Jay, what do you got?
Yeah, so, what if we used the 7 days, but take out the, like, 1 day of it, like that was like the highest? You know, using the highest, miles per hour. You know, so that way it's like, we're getting that sample size, but,
I think part of the issue was if they only go to 1 day, then they can do more places in a year.
oh, okay.
So that wouldn't solve that.
That's what that was.
Yeah, with the limiting factor of just doing it during the school year, when there's not a holiday, when they're not on break, when there's not snow or rain, that really limits how many days we're gonna get out of the school year to actually do studies.
Okay, and, so when are we gonna move on to, 2.0, the next street that we'll focus on? Is that something we're looking forward to doing soon?
So say that again.
The next street? Nope,
What?
just focusing on this street, one street in each ward?
Are you talking about the safety sensitive zones?
Yeah, because it feels like this is
Yeah.
what this is.
Oh,
No, it's different. And so we made a commitment to council, and it's shown under the tentative future agendas as, I think I put a placeholder for August. We want to get through a full year, have a full year's worth of data, which would be June, and then a couple months for staff to really look at the data and then come up with some suggested recommendations for council to react to. So we'll bring that back to you in August.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, are there any other items, council?
No.
Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned. We won't stop it, it's not a real meeting.